That's the part one still can't explain to people without sounding dishonest. I had reasons. Good ones. A better apartment offer 2 cities over. A friend who kept saying it'll be good for you. Even my own voice, late at night, rehearsing the logic. But every time I packed a box, something small stopped me. A pause. A thought that didn't finish its sentence. It started at the repair shop. Not the romantic kind. Fluorescent lights that buzzed when they warmed up, the smell of oil and burnt coffee, a radio that never quite tuned in. I was there because my car kept stalling and because I couldn't afford the dealership. I told myself it would be a one-time thing. She worked the counter. Mid-40s, maybe older. Not in the polished way you see online. More like someone who'd lived inside her life instead of around it. She wore reading glasses low on her nose and didn't rush to look up when I walked in. When she did, it wasn't curious. It was calm, like she already knew I'd wait. "What's it doing?" she asked. I started explaining too fast. Stalling at red lights. A noise I couldn't describe. A dashboard light that came and went like it was teasing me. She listened without interrupting, pen resting against her lip, eyes steady. When I ran out of words, she waited a beat longer than necessary. "Okay," she said. "We'll take a look." That stuck with me. Her name was Mara. I learned it from the receipt, not from her mouth. She didn't introduce herself. She didn't need to. People said her name like it was already familiar. Mechanics calling from the back, a woman dropping off keys, the delivery guy who nodded and said, "Morning, Mara," like they'd shared 1,000 mornings before. I sat in the plastic chair by the window, pretending to scroll while watching her move. Confident without being loud. Precise. She folded paperwork the same way every time, squared the edges with her thumbs. Once, she caught me looking and didn't look away. Just held it for a second too long, then glanced down like nothing had happened. When my car was ready, she walked me out. The afternoon had gone quiet. That strange lull where even the street sounds feel suspended. She explained what they'd fixed, pointed to something under the hood I didn't understand, then stopped mid-sentence. "You should move away," she said, like she was finishing a thought we'd started earlier. I laughed, because it felt like a joke. "Why?" She shrugged. "This place keeps people longer than they mean to stay." There was a pause. Not awkward exactly, more like unfinished. She handed me my keys, our fingers brushing by accident. Or maybe not. I felt it anyway. A brief pressure, a warmth that didn't belong to the moment. "Thanks," I said. She nodded, already turning back inside. Then she stopped, half-turned, doors still open behind her. "Drive safe," she added. Softer this time. I sat in my car for a full minute before starting it. The radio came on too loud. I turned it down, then off. I told myself it was nothing. Just a stranger doing her job. Just a comment. But that night, lying on my mattress with the box still half-packed at the foot of the bed, I kept thinking about the way she'd said you should move away, and how part of me wondered if she'd meant it for me, or for herself. The second time wasn't an accident. I told myself it was, the same way people lie about taking the long way home. Mara called 2 days later. My number was on the receipt, apparently, though I didn't remember writing it clearly. She said there was a part they'd ordered that hadn't been necessary after all. I could come by for a refund, or she could mail it. "I can stop by," I said too quickly. There was a pause on the line. Papers shifting. A breath that sounded tired. "All right," she said. "If you're around this afternoon." The shop was quieter than before. One bay closed. The radio off. Sunlight angled through the front windows and landed in pale stripes across the counter. Mara stood behind it with her sleeves rolled up, forearms smudged faintly with grease she hadn't noticed yet. "You caught us on a slow day," she said. "I'm good at that," I replied. She smiled, but it didn't last. It flickered, like something she'd put on out of habit and then forgotten to keep wearing. She handed me the refund envelope, and I noticed her hands, strong, steady, nails short and unpainted. A small cut along one knuckle, already healing. "You work too much," I said, before I could stop myself. Her eyebrows lifted. "Is that a diagnosis?" "No," I said. "Just observation." She studied me for a second, then turned away, busying herself with the register. "You don't know anything about my work." "I know you didn't take lunch," I said. And you've been standing since I got here. That got a quiet laugh out of her. Not amused, more surprised. Come on, she said, nodding toward the back. If you're going to call me out, you might as well earn it. I followed her past the counter, into the space where the smell of oil was heavier, where tools hung like they were part of the walls. She showed me what they'd fixed on my car, explaining slowly this time, pausing to make sure I was following. Once, her shoulder brushed mine when she reached for a wrench. She didn't move away right away. You ever think about leaving? I asked, not looking at her. She went still. For a moment, all I could hear was the hum of the lights. Then she exhaled through her nose, a sound that felt like letting go of something she'd been holding all day. Every year, she said. And every year something needs fixing. I glanced at her. She was watching the floor, jaw tight, like she'd said more than she meant to. I didn't mean, I started. It's fine. She cut in, softer now. People ask. I just don't usually answer. She wiped her hands on a rag, slower than necessary. When she looked up, there was tiredness there I hadn't seen before. Not dramatic, just worn around the edges. You should still move away, she added, almost gently. You've got time. I wanted to ask her why she sounded like she was convincing herself. I didn't. Instead, I said, maybe. She nodded, then surprised me by touching my arm. Just briefly, like she needed to anchor the moment before letting it go. Take care of that car, she said. It's got more life in it than it looks. I walked out a minute later, keys warm in my palm, her touch still where it had been. And for the first time, the idea of leaving didn't feel practical. It felt like walking away from something I hadn't even named yet. The third time stretched longer than either of us planned. A storm rolled in early, heavy and sudden, the kind that turns the sky the color of old metal. I was already at the shop, waiting on a minor adjustment, when the rain started hammering the roof hard enough to drown out conversation. One by one, the other customers left. The mechanics clocked out. Someone killed the front lights. Mara stayed. You can wait it out, she said, glancing at the windows. Road floods near the underpass. I'm in no rush, I said. That part was true. She locked the front door, the click loud in the empty space. The shop felt different without the radio, without voices, too open, like a room after furniture's been moved. She made coffee even though it was late, poured it into mismatched mugs she kept under the counter. It's terrible, she warned, handing one to me. It's warm, I said, and she smiled like that counted. We sat on opposite sides of the counter, not facing each other directly. She leaned back against the cabinets, arms crossed loosely, one ankle hooked behind the other. Up close, I could see the fine lines at the corners of her eyes, the faint shadow under them. She looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. You ever regret staying? I asked. She took a sip, winced, set the mug down. That's a dangerous question. I'm good at those, I said. She didn't answer right away. Outside, thunder rolled, slow and low. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter. I regret thinking I had more time, she said. Does that count? Before I could respond, her phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced at the screen and stiffened, not dramatically, just enough. I looked away, pretended to study a calendar from 3 years ago. She didn't answer it. Let it buzz again. Then stop. Sorry, she said, too quickly. It's fine. It's not, she corrected, then shook her head like she'd said that out loud by mistake. Just old noise. She pushed off the cabinet and walked toward the back, then stopped halfway. The distance between us closed without either of us meaning to. I could smell the coffee on her breath, feel the heat from her body in the cool shop. You make this place feel smaller, she said, like an observation. Not unkind. I can step outside, I offered. She looked at me then. Really looked. Her gaze dropped to my mouth, then back up, like she was checking herself. No, she said. It's not that. The lights flickered once. The storm pressed closer. Somewhere in the back, something dripped steadily. I wanted to tell her I thought about leaving less every day, that when she touched my arm, it stayed with me longer than it should. Instead, I said nothing. Let the silence do the dangerous work. She reached out, stopped. Her hand hovered near my wrist, fingers trembling almost imperceptibly. This is a bad idea, she whispered. I know, I said. For a second, Neither of us moved. Then the power went out completely, and in the dark, she inhaled sharply, like she'd almost leaned in. The power came back on in stages, one light, then another, like the building was waking up reluctantly. The moment didn't reset. It just sat there between us, exposed now, harder to ignore. Mara stepped back first. She turned away, rubbing her hands together like she was cold, even though the air hadn't changed. I stayed where I was, unsure if moving would make things worse or prove something I wasn't ready to admit. "This can't keep happening," she said finally. Her voice was steady, too steady. "I didn't think it was happening," I said. Not a lie, not the truth either. She looked at me then, eyes sharp but tired. "That's the problem." We stood there in the open space between the counter and the first bay. No storm noise now, just the faint hum of electricity and the drip I hadn't noticed before. Time felt stretched thin, like if one of us tugged, it would tear. "I don't usually do this," she said. "Do what?" "Let things blur." She exhaled slowly. "I like clear lines. I fix what's broken. I don't linger." I nodded, even though my chest felt tight. "I didn't mean to be something that blurs." "I know," she said. "That's worse." She leaned against the counter, fingers gripping the edge. I watched her hands, how the knuckles went pale, how she loosened her grip and tightened it again, like she was practicing restraint. "You're leaving," she said. It wasn't a question. I admitted. "I think." She closed her eyes at that, just for a second. When she opened them, something in her had shifted, not sadness exactly, more like acceptance arriving too early. "You shouldn't stay for this," she said. "For what?" She met my gaze and didn't look away this time. "For the way you look at me like I'm a decision." The words landed harder than anything else she'd said. I opened my mouth, then closed it. I didn't trust myself to answer without making a promise I couldn't keep. She straightened, smoothed her shirt, tried to put herself back together. "This is where it has to stop," she said, "before it turns into something that asks too much." I took a step closer, then stopped. The space between us felt deliberate now. Chosen. "Do you want it to stop?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. Her eyes dropped to the floor, then lifted back to mine. There was no performance in her face. Just truth, bare and uncomfortable. "I want it to make sense," she said. "And it doesn't." Neither of us moved. Neither of us reached. Outside, the rain started again, lighter this time, almost apologetic. "I don't know how to be the thing you think I am," she said quietly. And in the silence that followed, I realized she wasn't asking me to leave the shop. She was asking me not to stay in her life. I didn't go back for almost a week. Not because I was trying to be strong. More like I didn't trust myself to be normal around her anymore. I drove past the shop twice, slowed without meaning to, then kept going like I'd done something wrong. On the sixth day, she left a voicemail. Her voice was different, quieter, uneven at the edges. Not rushed, like she'd sat with the phone for a while before pressing record. "Hey, it's Mara. I found something that belongs to you. In your car. When we were cleaning the bay." A pause. I could hear breathing. "You don't have to come today. Or at all. I just didn't want to throw it away." She hung up without saying goodbye. I went. She was in the back when I arrived, sorting through a box that looked older than the rest of the shop. Cardboard softened with time. She looked up when she heard me, then froze like she hadn't expected me to actually show. "Hey," I said. "Hey." She wiped her hands on her jeans. "It's not urgent." "That's okay." She nodded once, then reached into the box and pulled out a folded piece of paper. My name was written on it, in my handwriting. A note I'd shoved into the glove compartment months ago. A list, really. Cities. Rent numbers. A reminder to call someone about a job lead. I didn't read it, she said quickly. I just saw the top. "It's fine," I said, though my stomach had already tightened. Seeing it in her hands felt too intimate, like she'd picked up a thought I hadn't shared. She handed it back, then hesitated. "There's something else," she said. She crossed the space to a corkboard near her desk and pulled down a photo. The paper curled slightly at the edges, like it had been taken down and put back up many times. It was a younger man, mid-20s, maybe, dark hair, familiar posture. He stood in front of the same shop, arms slung casually around Mara's shoulders. She was smiling in the photo, open in a way I'd never seen. I was married, she said. A long time ago. I waited. He left, she continued. Not dramatically. Just chose a different life. Different city. Her mouth pressed thin. I stayed. Fixed what I could. Told myself it was enough. She glanced at me, then away. You don't look like him, she said. You just feel like the moment before he decided to go. The words settled slowly. Heavy. I didn't know what to do with my hands, so I kept them still. I didn't mean to bring this into your life, she added. I thought I'd learn how to keep things contained. I'm not him, I said quietly. I know, she said. That's what scares me. She put the photo back on the board, but this time she didn't pin it. Just held it there, fingers trembling slightly. I don't want to make you a memory, she said. And I don't want to be one. The silence after that felt different. Not charged. Fragile. She handed me the photo instead of putting it back. Just don't disappear without telling me, she said. I took it from her, careful not to touch her hand. And for the first time, staying didn't feel like hesitation. It felt like a choice that would cost something either way. We didn't rush after that. No sudden dinners. No dramatic talks. Just a shift in gravity, like the space between us had finally decided what it was going to do. I showed up one evening close to closing, not because my car needed anything, but because I'd been circling the block and ran out of excuses. The lights were still on. Mara was wiping down the counter, movements slower than usual. You're late, she said, without looking up. I know. She nodded, like that was enough of an answer. We didn't stand across from each other this time. We sat on the low step near the back bay, side by side, shoulders not touching. The shop smelled cleaner than usual, solvent and rain. Outside, dusk settled without drama. I thought about what you said, she said after a while. Which part? She smiled faintly. That you're not him. I waited. I realized I've been living like everything meaningful already happened, she continued. Like my job was to maintain the wreckage. Keep it from getting worse. She picked at a loose thread on her sleeve. You make that feel unfinished. I swallowed. I didn't come here to fix anything. I know, she said. That's why it matters. Silence folded in around us. Not uncomfortable. Just careful. I might still leave, I said. It felt important to say it out loud. I don't know when. Or where. But it's not off the table. She nodded slowly. I wouldn't want it to be. That surprised me. I turned to look at her, and she met my gaze without flinching. I don't want to be the reason you stay, she said. I just don't want to pretend this isn't real while you're here. Something loosened in my chest at that. Permission, maybe. Or honesty finally meeting itself halfway. She shifted slightly, her hand resting on the concrete between us. Not reaching. Just there. I stared at it longer than I should have. Can I asked. She didn't answer with words. Just turned her palm up. When I took her hand, it wasn't electric. It was warm. Steady. Like something that had been waiting patiently to be acknowledged. Her thumb brushed my knuckle once, absent-minded, like she was testing the reality of it. We stayed like that as the last of the light faded. No kissing. No promises. Just the quiet agreement of bodies choosing proximity. After a while, she leaned her forehead against my shoulder. The weight of it surprised me. Not heavy, just real. I adjusted without thinking, letting my head tilt toward hers. Whatever this is, she said softly, it doesn't have to be forever. I know, I said. But it's not nothing, she added. I squeezed her hand once. She squeezed back. Outside, a car passed. Somewhere, a door shut. Life kept going. And for the first time since I'd thought about leaving, I wasn't trying to decide what came next. I was exactly where I was. I didn't move away. Not right then. Not in the way I'd planned with lists and deadlines and other people's certainty. Life kept happening in smaller decisions instead. Evenings that ended a little later. Mornings that started with a different weight in my chest. Mara and I never gave it a name. That felt important. Names have edges, and we were still learning how not to cut ourselves on them. What changed wasn't the obvious things. I still worked too much. She still locked up the shop every night like it was a ritual. The world didn't rearrange itself to make us more comfortable, but something in the way we moved through it softened. She laughed more. Not often, just enough that it meant something. Sometimes in the middle of explaining an engine problem, she'd stop and shake her head at herself, like she'd surprised her own reflection. I learned when to listen and when to stay quiet. That silence, I realized, wasn't empty. It was shared. I stopped thinking of leaving as escape. It became a question instead, one I didn't rush to answer. For the first time, staying somewhere didn't feel like failure. It felt like attention. There were hard moments. Days when she pulled back, when I could feel the old story tug at her, reminding her what it cost to want something that might not last. And days when I caught myself watching her too closely, memorizing details like I was afraid time would ask for them back. But we talked, not in speeches, in fragments, in half-finished thoughts over late coffee and early mornings. We learned how to say this matters without asking it to promise anything it couldn't keep. Love, I learned, isn't always about the future. Sometimes it's about being brave enough to be present without demanding guarantees. About choosing not to disappear just because something feels fragile. She didn't become younger. I didn't suddenly grow up overnight. What shifted was the space between us. It stopped feeling like a gap and started feeling like room. I still don't know how long I'll stay. She still doesn't plan further ahead than the next repair order. But now, when she leans against me at the end of the day, tired and real and unguarded, I understand something I didn't before. Some connections aren't meant to be owned. They're meant to be held carefully while they exist. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?